You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman. I'm chairman of Branford's Inland Wetland and Watercourse Commission. It is 7:16 in the evening on Thursday, March 24th, 2022. Meeting is being held remotely via Zoom. The rules that we've been enjoying for the last 2 years are in effect, and that is that if you want to participate, you can do that by raising your hand. Please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. And are there any other housekeeping items, Jamie, at this point?
Nope.
Okay. This is a special meeting. The agenda has been filed at the town's website. There's only one item on the agenda this evening. We're going to do a roll call first, and then we'll get into it. We're here to discuss the regulations this evening, and we've had a couple meetings on the regulations. Let's see, Peter Basserman here, Melissa Papatonis.
Melissa Papatonis here.
Suzanne Boda,
Commissioner Boda here.
Clarice Begeman,
Commissioner Begeman here.
and I think that's 4 for 4. Okay. We have regulation revisions. Continue review of possible revisions to the inland wetland and water courses regulations. Again, material was put in the Dropbox, as well as for those that were looking for material to be mailed. I know that material has been mailed. Jamie, you said you wanted to start at 7.1.
Yes, so
This is Commissioner Boda. Can you just answer one question for me first? I'm in the Dropbox and there's like a lot of documents. Can you tell me which one? There's like superseded draft regulations.
So primarily you want the one that's called 2A draft regulation changes with track changes, but we're also going to be using 2C. And that's actually the one that we're going to start off with. So 2C, last minute things that I got some final language on that I wanted to throw in. So we're going to go from the beginning of the regs to the end of the regs for things that are still outstanding for review. The first one is 7.1, and this touches base on something we've already looked at. Section 21.1 is adopting regulations, establishment of the regulations, and in that section we used to have language regarding application forms. So I just moved that into the application requirements section so that we still state what the process is, but have it be something that's a little bit less involved, since it's not required to have a public hearing and be filed in the town clerk's office by the state statutes. I'm not sure why we had that language there. So by moving it to section 7.1, it just puts everyone on notice as to what the proposed method for adopting new application forms is, and that's simply the commission taking a vote. Any questions or concerns? Alrighty, so then we're gonna jump over to that other document that I was talking about, the 2A draft regulation revisions. And we're gonna jump to section 7.6A. So this is the stormwater section that we were looking at, and primarily I think that we wanted
2A superseded.
no, it's not superseded.
Right.
There's
I
two.
had it, and then I clicked on the C one, so now I'm back out of it again.
Oh no.
Just 2A.
2A draft regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. We
No, that's okay. I just
didn't
I
want
wanna
to
make
take
sure
things
I'm-
out.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I'm like actually in the right, looking at the right version.
Certainly. All right, so I did not come up with any modifications to this. Unfortunately, I was out sick a couple days after our last meeting. I did look around for other definitions for redevelopment, and I wasn't really finding anything that seemed appropriate for our specific use of it. If the commission is interested in this language, we can certainly continue to look for that, a better definition, or just go with the one that was provided via the MS4 general permit.
Does anybody have issues with the MS4 definition?
So the other thing that we're looking at here, aside from the definition, is whether or not the commission wants to provide a specific break for redevelopment. So section 7(6)(a)(1)(1) would be the language we're looking at. Right here. In the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection of impervious areas to the stormwater system, at least 50% of the water quality volume shall be treated by retention and infiltration on site unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so. Generally, the commission requires 100% of the water quality volume, and does provide for the out of or demonstrate why it is not feasible and or prudent. And if that's the case, then they have to treat it via secondary measures, which would be like a treatment train practice.
This is Commissioner Papantonis speaking. That my only concern with that is going forward, if something has already been developed with a higher stormwater, like we're stepping back on redevelopment if something's already at a higher level. Am I making myself clear? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think that that's not really going to be an issue because it says at least 50%. But certainly by coming up with these thresholds, it sets a lower bar for an applicant to strive for. Whereas if you keep it open-ended, they strive for the 100%. And if they can't, then maybe they can make 70%. But if you say they only have to meet 50%, they're probably not readily going to offer 70%.
This is Commissioner,
I just-
but what it does do, it provides a strong encouragement for redevelopment. And to me, if we can't agree that that's a worthwhile endeavor, then maybe this whole section doesn't need to be addressed in this form. I, for one, think it's probably a good idea to try to do redevelopment. The question is, how much of an incentive do we want to provide?
This is Commissioner Boda. Jamie, did you say that this number, that 50% number came from, where did you say it came from?
The
state?
MS4 stormwater general permit state, yeah, stormwater discharge permit.
And I wonder, do you have any idea of where they came up with 50?
I do not.
Would it be arbitrary to say 80 and then just let them handle? Because I feel like the thing with 50, right, is then we get into this haggling. And I think Chairman Basserman's, I mean, we're gonna like, so they're gonna, or what you just said, they're not gonna aim for the 100, they're gonna aim for the 50. And although it says at least, and so we have the opportunity to say, look, you have, this is already a developed site, you're redeveloping it. Because there is the out of, unless it's demonstrated why it's not prudent, feasible or prudent to do so.
Yeah.
And so we can, I guess the number 80% or 70% or 50%, I'm just worried about setting the bar. I do agree with Chairman Basserman that it is certainly preferable to encourage development to occur where it's already been impervious. I have concerns about setting the bar so low right out of the gate. Because the state is a minimum. I mean, so it's not like we typically are like, yeah, let's go to the minimum.
This is Commissioner Bagman. I'm trying to understand what this is, and I think what I'm understanding, it's a redevelopment, and the site already has 40% of the water running directly into stormwater system, which I assume is just off the asphalt into the drainage system. Then if you're redeveloping it, you have to get at least 50% of the total new runoff, the old and the new combined or whatever, has to get retained or infiltrated. So so those numbers must mean, they must have been put there for a reason. And I'm just thinking, if you have the site and almost half of it is going directly to the runoff into storm sewer system without any infiltration, then the improvement is, it's not much of an improvement, is it? It's only really 10%.
Unless you have already 95% direct connected, which we do have, then you could be requiring some sort of retro bit type solution. I mean, that's the extreme end of it. We have a lot of sites that are close to like 70%. So if they're going from 70 to 75% and you're requiring 50% and they currently have 0, then that's quite a change. But it is also quite an improvement over the existing condition, which is why granting a break from the 100% does make some sense, because if you already have your site 70% built out and direct connected, you're more restricted in what you can do to manage the stormwater oftentimes, particularly when you're looking at the cost analysis of it as well, which it's not a reason to not do something, but it's certainly a factor for consideration.
Well, and that's why I'm wondering if like the number doesn't have to be so low, because it doesn't seem like a huge gain from the state. The state is the low bar. And there's room for consideration through a showing of like just hardship, right? Like it may be that they can engineer their way out of it if we set the bar for them. But if we don't, and it's this kind of then they're just going to do that. They're going to rush to the minimum. I mean, who wouldn't? It's less expensive. But they would still gain by going after or going for an already developed site.
Yeah, and I think Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, I think the fact that it does have the out at both levels for if you can't do it, there's a little bit less concern about arbitrary. And if you wanted to do different numbers, maybe you could meet it halfway and do 70% and 75%, or I don't know, but that shows that the commission understands that there's a benefit to doing this and there's a reason to grant a reduction, and it provides a target goal, but it also understands that might not be able to be met. But I don't have anything to suggest what numbers you should use other than.
I mean, this is Commissioner, but I think 75 is fine. I think that just splitting the difference and calling it a day, and then something's gonna happen and we're gonna find out that this works or this doesn't, and maybe we keep, maybe there's a way. We've been really wonderful about keeping summaries and summarizing what's happening with the applications, and maybe to start noting for those already developed properties and their impervious surface, like, does the 75 work? Or are we just chasing our tail? Or have we given up something that we probably didn't need to because that number was there?
So is the commission happy with keeping the 40% direct connection and just changing the 50 to 75%?
Well, it says
I can
40%.
tell
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Papantonis, it says 40% or more. So that number doesn't bother me as much as the other. I prefer that one to be 75 for the same reasons that Commissioner Boda stated.
All right. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, does the commission want to add the definition of redevelopment from the MS4 stormwater general permit, or do you want to leave it open-ended so that you would then reference a dictionary for the definition of redevelopment should it be questioned?
This Commissioner
What do you
Papantonis,
think?
has there been an issue with this? I mean, have people questioned what we mean by redevelopment?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, we haven't really used redevelopment as a term to quantify or provide any sort of break from the regulations previously. So this would be a new scenario.
Okay.
Question is whether or not the commission wants to know, to define redevelopment or kind of keep it more open-ended. And generally the process is if a commission does not define a term in their regulations, that you would default to looking it up in the dictionary. I think, there's pros and cons to both.
I just want to add that last time we talked about this, I pulled out Black's Law Dictionary and it wasn't in there. So I'd be okay with the MS4 definition if we choose to define it.
This is Commissioner Proda.
Good.
I think I want to just take a quick peek at that definition. But since the remainder of this, I guess the driver for this language is the MS4 permit, that it would make sense to reference redevelopment, their language for redevelopment. So it says, so I'm at, UConn's, the guide for the MS4. Says redevelopment means any construction activity, including but not limited to clearing and grading, grubbing, grading, excavation, and dewatering within existing drainage infrastructure or at an existing site to modify or expand or add onto existing buildings or structures, grounds, or infrastructure. That seems like it would, that's fine. I'm happy with it.
So should that be added to section 2 definitions?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that's all.
I wanted to go online just to see if I could find something. City of Stamford has something where they also have what if the case is if you're less than, if the direct connection of impervious areas is less than 40%.
If it's less than 40%, then they have to meet the full water quality volume 100%.
And is that in here somewhere?
It is, it's at top. So 7.6a says, I'm trying to see if I can shorten it up. Demonstration that the project has been designed at a minimum in accordance with guidance and recommendations set forth in the 2002 Connecticut Deep Soil Erosion and Sediment Control Manual as updated in the 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual as updated. No, so 76A1. Treatment of at least the water quality volume is to be by retention and infiltration on site unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so. And then one underneath that says, in the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection of impervious areas to the stormwater system, at least 50% of the water quality volume shall be treated.
Yeah, so I'm just, Commissioner Begeman, I just see that in Stanford, they say when it's in the case of redevelopment or new development or redevelopment with less than 40%, then they want all of the water quality volume retained. So I don't know if that's important to us, but I see that it's left out, kind of, right?
All right, so I see what your concern is, but I think, so it might be in the way that it's worded. So 76A1 does say treatment of at least the water quality volume is to be by retention. So maybe changing 1.1 to say, in the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection. I don't know, maybe just in one.
I see.
Indicating that that's a break from the standard requirement would help clarify that.
Commissioner Begeman, again, I guess by the way it's written, I was thinking that redevelopment was only being talked about in 76.1.1.
Maybe if we started 176A11 with this requirement may be reduced in the case of redevelopment of a site with. Would that help?
This is Commissioner Bassman. One more time, Jamie.
So 7A11, if we say this requirement may be reduced in the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection of impervious areas to the stormwater system at least 50% stormwater system period, at least 50 at least 50% of the water quality volume shall be treated by retention and infiltration on site unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. Didn't we just change that number to 70?
Yes, it would be 70. I have that off to the side.
Wait, was it 70 or 75?
It's 75. It's way up.
There you go.
My dog was barking, sorry.
We have closure on this one.
Does the commission think that it's beneficial to add this requirement may be reduced for 1.1?
I think making a bold statement by putting that in there. So if it helps direct the applicant to the right conclusion, yeah, I think it's helpful.
Well, could I ask Commissioner Begeman to please give us the Stanford, what Stanford says about less than 40%?
They just have, the Commissioner Begeman, they just say new development / redevelopment, DCIA, that's the direct connection, whatever that says.
Connected area.
Less than 40%
This area. Sorry.
WQV. And then they say redevelopment with the DCIA, more than equal to 40%, retain half water quality volume. And then they have a third category of linear development, retain 1/2 WQV or treat WQV. I don't know. I just, we can't look at all the, I just thought, I was just thinking, wonder what some other town does, and this one popped up and they have a very beautiful visual thing about it all. But then I started thinking about that less than 40%. That's what made me want to bring it up.
Yeah, so I think because we skipped over that, it maybe wasn't clear, but that is the default standard still, is that you have to retain the water quality volume, unless in the case of redevelopment, greater 40% or greater direct connection in impervious areas, then you would get a reduction in the standard. Is the commission okay with it, or I mean, I think any
Yes.
more involved revisions would require another meeting, so.
Right.
All right. Any other questions on 7.6A?
Move it.
All right, so the next one is 8.4. This came to my attention recently because it came to my attention that there's some supplement information available on state statute changes. So I looked that up and I did not realize that there had been a change. Oh, wait. This doesn't have it. I might be in the wrong document. Basically, there was a change to the language regarding the water. If you're in the watershed of a public water utility. 1 minute, I'm sorry, bear with me. I think that it looks like this language may not have made it into the Dropbox. So I'm gonna see if I can pull it up.
Commissioner Bassman, is this a language change, Jamie, or just a reference change?
It's a language change. Basically, the long and short of it is, I believe that now applicants can notice the State Department of Public Health via email. That's like the bulk change of it. Is the commission good with, since it's changes per statute, me sending that up to the state? You'd still have to look at it during the public hearing process. All right, I'm sorry about that. All right, so moving on, the next one is 11.6, change in the land permit. So 11.6, also, maybe this change didn't make it in there. There was just one minor modification for that resource available regarding the state statute changes. We had a date off by 1 day, so we just changed that to align with the state language. And that would be yeah, it looks like that one didn't carry over either. So we have June 9th, but it's supposed to be June 10th. So those were the two changes that were per state statute. So we'll change this to say June 10th per state statutes as well. All right, so that brings us to section 13, which is the regulation or the bonds. I did have an opportunity to touch base with town council, and I have that language available. Does the commission want to jump into that, or do you want to continue through with everything that we've kind of been looking at already?
Commissioner Bassman, one man's opinion, I just as soon, keep going with the regulations that we have, and let's see how we make out, and to the extent that we don't get to bonds, maybe that's, live for another day with that one. One man's opinion.
Okay, so we'll keep going and we'll see where we're at.
I agree.
Okay, yeah.
19.
All right, so yeah, moving on, we're on 19. So I think the big question we have here is what we actually want the fees to be. At the last meeting where we discussed this, we had, of course, that's split over 2 pages, so that's not helpful. We kind of had some numbers, and the commission wanted us to go from 3 brackets to 4 brackets to try and make those numbers a little bit fit, maybe a little bit better, because some of the application fees were going pretty high on the high ends, to keep application fees similar to what we currently have. So there's kind of 2 different ways that we were looking at setting up the table, and unfortunately it's split over a page, so it's not very helpful, but either doing a side-by-side table with what the fee is per 500 square feet of disturbance. So up to 1,000, it'd be 125 for the first 500, it would be 250 for 1,000. So the table below that, which we can't really see very well because it's split, kind of takes out that math, takes out having to do the math for you. So it says up to 500 is 125, 501 to 1,000 is 250, 1,001 to 5,000 is 250 plus $16 per 500 square feet over 1,000. 5,000 to 2,000 is 378 plus 12 per 5,000 or per 500 square feet over 5,000, and then over 200,000 would be $5,058 plus $6 per 500 over 200,000 square feet. Does the commission have a preferred way of providing this information? I have the same table in the last version, and it's not split across 2.
This is Commissioner Boda. I have no strong feelings about this at all.
Okay. Does anyone?
Commissioner Papantonis, as long as the people that are applying for the permits can figure out the math, I'm okay with it.
Commissioner Beglin, I like the second one.
I think the second one makes it a little bit easier. So if there's no strong preferences beyond Clarice's possible preference, then we will we'll go with the second one.
Thank you, Commissioner Begeman.
All right. So now I think the bigger component of this is figuring out the fee. So for the last meeting, I had sent out these tables. They're also in the Dropbox. They're items 3. There's one for residential and one for commercial. And we have 4 different possible fee structures for each grouping. So in the past, I'm going to start with residential. So in the past, we've split fees with single family and duplex being one group, and all other residential being lumped in with commercial and industrial uses. So there was a state statute change that said you can't assess multifamily different than single family. So am now looking to put all residential fees in one group and all commercial, industrial, and other uses in a second group. Basically, the places that it changes is on the higher end, so the first two brackets are the same in both options. And basically what I did was the third bracket on this page is 12, and then the fourth bracket is either $4 or $6. I think if the commission's looking to keep the fees as similar to today's fees as possible, the commission should go with a $6 for fourth bracket. And then on the second page, it's the same thing, but instead of the third bracket being $12, it's $14. So this option here is, I would say probably somewhat consistently on the extreme ends, more similar with our current fees. One thing I wanted to point out is, again, subdivisions, multifamily used to be under the commercial and other fees. So this difference is based on single family and duplex fees. So when you're getting up to 100,000 to 200,000 square feet of disturbance, that would have probably fallen under our commercial fee structure. So instead of being like for 100,000 square feet, instead of it being $3,038, it probably would have been 3,500. And for 200,000 square feet, instead of being 5,838, it probably would have been 6,000. Or I'm sorry, instead of it being $4,020, it would have been 6,000. So this $538 figure would actually be a bit of a break from the $6,000 figure it probably would have been. So it's really not an increase of $1,638 unless somebody's doing a single family or duplex with 200,000 square feet of disturbance, which I highly doubt we'll ever see. So again, I think that if the commission's looking to keep it consistent with their current fees, the $6 on the higher end of the fee structure makes the most amount of sense. So up to 1,000 is where the 125 applies. $16 per 500 square feet would be in this area. This area would be the $14 per 500 square feet, and then the $6. So I think the main question would be whether you want the middle bracket to be $14 or $12. And then with the commercial, it's the same thing. Again, I would suggest using the $6 on the higher end of the bracket if you're looking to keep it consistent with your current fees, which was the guidance we were given. And then it would be either $14 or $16. So one additional thought I have to feed in, then I'll let you guys process a bit, is on the higher end, again, those fees used to be more, they would have come out of the commercial and other residential. So I don't know if you want that third bracket to be the same for commercial and residential, or if you want to continue to provide a difference at that level. I think the place where it makes the biggest difference is in the single family, the 31. So if you were to go with the more expensive price for single family, when you're in the larger, like acre size single family house, it does bring up the application fee. Not too much, but it certainly makes it different. But we also sometimes get subdivisions that are in that size. It depends on the project. So kind of want it to account for all scenarios.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Would you say that most of the single-family residences in Branford are zone 1 acre?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent, I don't have an honest answer to that. I don't think so. There's a lot of, so for, I think the only zone that zone R5 is the largest zone, and I think that requires 40,000 square feet. So there's no residential zones that require more than 1 acre for single family. I think like if you're getting into multifamily, it does, but.
This is Commissioner Broda. I feel like, especially down in the Short Beach area,
Yeah.
we have some very small lots. I mean, even here, off of Brushy Plains, we have some surprisingly small lot sizes that they just pop a house on. I mean, it's zoned and they, it's a buildable lot, so.
So what I guess what I was getting at, Mr. Bassman, is, yeah, we're in most of the time, gonna be in that less than 20,000 square foot disturbance area.
I think so, Jamie Fredericton, the wetland agent. Yeah, I think the smallest residential lot size is 15,000 square feet, but there's a lot of non-conforming lots, especially on the waterfront, that are even smaller. And yeah, and like we had a 4-lot subdivision not too long ago that was less than 1 acre with all 4 lots.
Yeah.
So, actually, I think the smallest lot size is 12,500 square feet, but it's fairly small. So yeah, it's a lot of our single family residential houses fall into the 20 to 30,000 max. I think we only have a handful that have been over 30,000.
Yeah, so I mean, we're spending a lot of time and energy on designing a
Yeah,
neighborhood.
and again, this is based off of area of disturbance. So if you have an acre lot, you're not necessarily going to disturb that whole acre.
Right.
All right, so any additional
The recommendation, just to be clear,
questions?
Commissioner Bassman, the recommendation from staff is the 125, 16, 14, 6.
For residential or
Yes.
125, 16, 14, 6. I would say either that or the 125, 16, 12, 6. I think either would be fine, but I think if you did the 14, it would keep it in line with the commercial on the higher end, which would also help keep it in line with what your past fees have been, which is what our directive was.
That works for me.
All right, so 125, 16.
Yeah, but I mean, we should, on this one, make sure that each commissioner is comfortable with that, and I'm just one vote here.
Yep.
Commissioner Begemon, that works for me, 16, 125, 16, 14, 6.
Commissioner Papatonis?
Yes, that works for me.
All right,
Commissioner
now,
Broda, I agree.
and I guess based on your comment, Jamie, then that would mean that the recommendation on the commercial side would be 220, 14, 6.
Sorry. For on the commercial side, 220, and then, yeah, so the option would be either 14.6 if you wanted to keep it in line with the commercial, or we were also looking at the 220, 16.6, which I think keeps it a little bit more in line with what the commercial fees were.
Yeah, on the chart here, it looks like every bracket got a break with the 2014-6.
Yeah, it's definitely bringing the prices down for the most part if you keep it at 14.
But they're not so much different on the chart above it. The break is different, but it's still a break.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the break is bad. I just.
Yeah. Well, and at the last meeting, we were talking about how on the higher end, the application fees were getting a little bit,
Yeah.
they were definitely higher than the cost of review. And also keep in mind, if you have a 935,500 square foot project, this application fee is the base application fee. It doesn't include the fee associated with any direct wetland impacts. It doesn't include the peer review. It doesn't include the public hearing. Those things are all assessed separately. So I'm okay with either. It's up to the commission.
All right, we'll do a around the horn here and see where we go from here. Commissioner Begeman, what's your preference?
On this one, I'm a little confused about our intention, so maybe somebody can just restate it, which one we're going for and why.
Jamie Frederick, in the wetland agent. So I think we're looking at either the 220-16-6 or the 220-14-6 for the commercial fees. If you want, I can pull that back up on the screen. This is the residential one, which isn't going to help. So here's the commercial one. So we're looking at 220-16-6. You can see it gives a slight, for the numbers assessed, it gives a slight fee reduction for most of the sections. And then once you get up to the really high values, it gives a greater reduction because 24,500 is probably more than we spend on reviewing any application, particularly since the commission can hire a peer review. Oftentimes on the back end of things, once a permit is issued on larger projects, the commission will require that the applicant have a third party do inspection reports, which helps us in the inspection side of things. So I do think giving a larger break on these higher prices is reasonable. So the question is whether we want 220-16-6 for our brackets. So the main question is this area here. So the other option would be 220-14-6, and the 14-6 would keep it in line with what the residential fees are. You can see it gives a little bit more of a break, and it would keep the higher end of the application fees more consistent with like the subdivision application fees. However, it also means that the commission is providing that little bit more of a break in the application fee and perhaps recovering a little bit less in the review end, but I think either would be sufficient to cover the commission, because while certainly there is a desire for the commission to recover their costs, there is certainly also nuance to all applications.
Does any commissioner have a preference?
I think this Commissioner Papantonis, I think I prefer the 2016-6.
That sounds like a motion.
I'll make the motion.
It doesn't have to be a motion, but if you're making a motion.
But if it gets closure, it would be worthwhile.
Is there
Okay with-
not a formal
I'm
motion?
with Commissioner Papatonis's recommendation.
Anyone feel differently? Everyone ready to move on?
Yep.
And keep in mind that not everyone can see faces, so try to verbally express your opinions. All right, so moving on. I think the last one we have on the list here is subdivision, re-subdivision. So staff is proposing that, so we have two different types of applications: applications with regulated activity and applications that do not involve regulated activities. Under applications that do not involve regulated activities, we have subdivision/re-subdivision referral. I'm proposing we add per CGS section 8-26E. That's where the language referral comes from. And then I propose, and it says without regulated activity. I'm proposing that we add or cause to be conducted regulated activity. I think that if the commission is looking at a subdivision that's going to include regulated activity, they should be looking at that while they're approving the subdivision up front. Especially since planning and zoning side of things, they usually look at the subdivision and the grading plan, and they approve the grading plan and their special exceptions at the same time that they're approving their subdivision. And inland wetlands is supposed to make a decision before planning and zoning. So if you're approving the subdivision with specific lots to come back, then they're getting their inland wetland approval after they get their planning and zoning approval, and it gets quite messy. So I think just adding the or cause to be conducted regulated activity makes it clear that this is a subdivision where there is no regulated activity proposed. An example would be a single family lot that has 2 houses on it, predates zoning, and they want to subdivide the lot so that each house is on its own lot. They're not proposing to do anything. It's just putting a line on a piece of paper. There happens to be wetlands on the property. Per section 8-26 of the Connecticut statutes, which is the zoning statutes, inland wetlands are required to provide a report with their findings about the subdivision if there's any wetlands on the subject property. So this would pretty much be comparable to a jurisdictional ruling request. And so one of the questions I had asked that I don't think I really got an answer to is, does the commission want to keep it at $50, or does the commission want to change it to $0 to align with the jurisdictional ruling request? And to help kind of, I know in the past, there's been a lot of question when somebody submits an application. Is it a subdivision with regulated activity, or is it a subdivision without regulated activity? Does the commission have any concerns with the proposed language? And again, should it be $50 or $0? Those are the 2 questions.
Commissioner Bassman, how many of these do we have in a year?
Oh, it depends from year to year. Some years we have 0, other years we have 2. But it's always an issue when it comes up since the commission last revised the regulations.
Commissioner Boda, I like the change, and I think that in an effort to be consistent, that I would be fine with 0. If really what it amounts to is essentially a jurisdictional ruling.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that would be my interpretation of this, since it is a fee underneath applications that do not involve regulated activities. If there's any commission's conditioning or anything, then that means the commission's determined that that activity is a regulated activity, and it should be processed as an application with regulated activity. It might be a situation where the applicant could request a fee reduction and propose their rationale for why they think a fee reduction would be appropriate.
Commissioner Bassman, I guess.
In certain.
Would there be a site visit on this? Not for commission, but would staff need to go out at all?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I think it would depend on the situation and the level of information provided. But I think if it's a well-known property with a survey and a wetland delineation, you wouldn't necessarily.
How many of those do we have?
Right, but I would say we've had at least 2 that I've been here. But we've been putting a lot of things in this category, and I think it's unclear what should go in this category and what shouldn't. So I think by making it's a very small bucket, but by making it a bucket that is simply projects that are not regulated activity are not going to cause regulated activity. And I think there's room to make an argument if you're subdividing your lot, but there's no plan to build a house at this time. There's no plan. You're just subdividing an extra parcel off. You're not going to do any activity. That could fall into this as well. But if you're proposing to build a house, in the near future on that property, then that should really be part of it as well. And I think that kind of falls into with zoning's requirements are, and staff working with the planning and zoning department to say, okay, can they do this subdivision without a special exception for that other lot at this time? And if their answer is yes, then I think this subdivision without regulated activity would be the correct process for inland wetlands.
Commissioner Begemon, I'm good with it. I would just, I approve it with a 0, and I would choose instead of or cause to be, it should be a nor. I think grammatically, without regulated activity, nor cause to be conducted regulated activity. All right? Anyhow,
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think that I grabbed that language from the regulations. So
Oh.
the regulations, the statutes. So that's why I'm like, regulated activity nor cause to be. Yeah, I think that nor would be appropriate.
Anybody have problem with 0?
No,
All right, does the commission want to look at the bond regulation revisions? And you can look at them and you can say, nope, hold off. We can look at them. Maybe you say, okay, let's keep looking.
What time we got here?
8:12.
8:12. Yeah, let's take a peek.
Okay. So this is the document 2C for those of you that are following along on your own. So 7.1 we already went over. So section 13 for us was pretty bare bone. We basically had the deep model regulations with some modifications, and then back in 2017, the commission adopted language that allowed for bonds over $10,000 up to 50% of that to be a surety bond. So this kind of takes the language we had in the first section and reverts it back to match with the model regulation language. And then, so basically this first sentence, the agency may require as a permit condition, the filing of a bond with surety in such amount and in a form approved by the agency. That's per the model reg. And then added, the permittee shall submit an itemized estimate for the items to be bonded to the agency for review by the agency or its duly authorized agent. Quantities for sediment and erosion controls shall be provided by the project engineer as applicable. All bonding for sediment and erosion controls must be submitted cash, check, certified check, unless otherwise approved by the agency and town council. So that is to so the commission has, in my understanding, had kind of a couple of concerns with the bonds. One is who submits the bond, and 2 is being able to provide some flexibility should a situation come up where the commission deems flexibility would be beneficial. So by putting in that otherwise, unless otherwise approved by the agency and town council, it allows the commission to provide some flexibility in a situation that you may not be aware of right now. I'm proposing to get rid of the 10,000 and 50% because those numbers, as far as I understand, are arbitrary. I'm not sure where they specifically came from, other than the commission granted that for one person and then decided to adopt it as a regulation. Proposing to keep the bond or surety shall be conditioned on compliance with all provisions of these regulations and the terms, conditions, and limitations established in the permit. Section 13.3 is going into specifically the types of bonds. For the purpose of this section, a bond shall mean one of the following: a surety bond issued by a company licensed to do business in the state of Connecticut, accompanied by the power of attorney of the person executing the bond for the company. Said company shall have offices in the New Haven County and must submit certification from its home office that the local office in New Haven County has authority to pay out the full value of the bond. B, cash, check, or certified check made out to the town of Branford in the required amount. Such funds will be deposited into an escrow sub-account. And C, other forms may be acceptable as approved by the agency and town council. The language for 13A came from Madison. And kind of the general structure of this language came from Madison with some modifications specifically for Branford. And to take out some forms of bonds that the finance department wasn't necessarily thrilled about. So.
Commissioner Bassman, have you touched base with finance with this proposed language and they're okay with it?
I touched base with them regarding the Madison language. So specifically, they were concerned about passbooks and I think letters of credit and some of the difficulties surrounding those items. Finance seemed to really think surety bonds was a good way to go. I expressed that the commission in the past has liked cash because it provides the means for the commission to have things addressed more quickly. I did talk with Jim Finch, the director of finance, and I'm spacing on the name, but somebody from I want to say it was the town. I can't remember. But it was suggested that surety bonds are also less liability to the town. So from that vantage point, I did check with town council to make sure they didn't have any concerns with the commission requiring cash, and they did not. So that's why I stuck with the surety bond and the cash, which are the two options that we currently allow for. And then again, other forms may be acceptable as approved by the agency and town council to provide an opening for kind of the unknown, but to not just blanketly approve other things. And again, instead of the 10,000 and 50% for surety bond, it would be basically, it could be anything other than sediment and erosion control measures. So if they require a bond for planting, it could theoretically be surety bond because there shouldn't be an immediate need to plant for the most part, as long as erosion controls are in place. Section 13.4 goes into the form of the surety bond and making sure that it adequately covers what the commission wants to be bonded for. And the fact that the applicant must submit renewal documentation, failure to do so may result in the permit being suspended or revoked. Where a bond has been posted and work covered by said bond has not been completed within the terms of the permit, the agency or its duly authorized agent may declare the project to be in default with the permit and require that all work be completed regardless of the extent of the development at the time. The agency or its duly authorized agent may use bond funds to bring the site into compliance with the non-compliant items for which the bond pertains.
This Commissioner Bassman, hang on, Jimmy. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
There's a lot here. Has town council looked at this over and said good to go, or where are we at in terms of signing off from town council?
Yeah, so a lot of this language is based loosely off of, or primarily off of Madison, with changes that I thought would be beneficial based on Branford's practice and experiences. I did ask Madison about their experiences with the bond language, and the person I spoke with didn't have any direct experience, so I couldn't get that information. I did talk about it with town council. It has been reviewed by town council. They're okay with the language. They know that a lot of it's based off of the Madison language as well.
Now, I guess the question is, Commissioner Bassman, the question is, how do we get comfortable with this? And is that something that we're going to feel that we can do quickly? My concern is that with the language that's here and the discussions that'll take place, that we forestall, putting to bed the regulations that we just got through and went over, and we need to get them to deep and have a public hearing and all that kind of stuff. So my sense is that we're okay today, I guess, with the bonds language that we have in the regulations today. Are we having issues with the requirements regarding the bonding with applicants?
I mean, we've had a couple of concerns brought to the commission's attention. I think types of bond, who submits the bond, and I think that's part of why that's part of what the commission's been concerned with. But I mean, we haven't had a lot of concerns brought to the commission's attention, particularly from a lot of different people. So, I mean, I don't think there's any immediate need to change things, but I think from a staff vantage point, I think that there's definitely room to improve the bond language. And I think specifically changing that 50% of over 10,000, particularly because I think that would be helpful to possibly, the smaller projects, homeowners, and also again, the 10,000 and the 50% doesn't really seem to be based off of anything. And I think basing it off of things that need to be addressed immediately versus things that aren't necessarily, it has to happen, within 5 days or it's going to be catastrophic. Then you can go through the process of pulling the surety bond and doing it that way. But I mean, there's nothing in the bonds that needs to be addressed. But there are other things that we have in the general revisions that are per state statute changes.
Could we go carve out and take care of the 50% 10,000 issue and call it a day for bonds for this deregulation change?
I suppose we could look at just adopting, let me see, possibly 13.1 and I think you'd want 13.1, 13.2, and 13.3 at bare minimum. And 13, I don't know. I think if you were looking to revise the bond regulations, you should do it all at once and consider whether you want all of these things or if you don't want these things. But I think it'd be hard to parse out part of it.
Commissioner Papantonis, I think this is kind of a lot to do in the time that we've got tonight.
So I think the main question is this something the commission wants to continue at the next meeting and delay sending language up to deep? Or does the commission want to table the bonds for another time, take the language that we have with the modifications we discussed, send it up to deep, schedule the public hearing, and move forward with the other changes?
This is Commissioner Boda. Is this the last piece? Is the bond language?
Yeah, the bond language would be the last thing that we have in our notes. But
So then why don't we can take one last pass at it before we send it up to deep. I mean, we're so close. It's just, this next section is a big chunk. I don't know about anybody else, but I've been sitting here since 6 o'clock. So already after day. So my brain is not feeling fresh. And for that dense of language, I would prefer to be fresher. So I think we could do it in one more meeting, and I think we could probably do it in an hour, maybe an hour and a half. And then we would have something would be good to send everything up to deep.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. So if we were to do that at the next regularly scheduled meeting, I believe we could get it sent to deep to have the public hearing at the regular June meeting. Unless the commission wants to do more special meetings, but.
What is the next meeting? Because I think that's part of the issue is what the next meeting looks like in terms of, the amount of stuff.
I don't want to jinx us.
Okay. I don't know, maybe we play it by ear, because if, we're at the next meeting and it's 9:30 and we're about to start. I don't know that that's really the answer. Not for something that requires clarity of thinking and parsing of words.
I guess, Commissioner Bassman, I guess I'm okay with kind of the wait and see, but if it gets to the point where we have a full agenda for the next meeting, I'm not sure I want to hold off everything because we didn't discuss bonds.
Yeah, I think if we don't discuss it at the April 14th meeting, that pushes us off to not having the public hearing until July. Because we have to then wrap up all the language, send it to Deep, post the notice, and it has to be sent to Deep at least 35 days prior to the public hearing. I mean, unless you wanted to have a special meeting in June or something, a special meeting in April to review the language, and then a special meeting in June to.
This is Commissioner
Public hearing.
Papantonis. I just want to point out that the next meeting, I think, is Holy Thursday for those who are celebrating Easter the following weekend, which may be a problem for some people. It's not a problem for me, but just want to point that out.
I did not notice that when we were doing the schedule review.
I guess to this is Commissioner Bassman, to Commissioner Boda's point, I guess we can see how we deal with it on the 14th or don't deal with it on the 14th. But I guess for whatever reason, if it turns out that we didn't discuss bonds, is everyone okay with wrapping up what we did to send out? Or at that point, I guess we could decide to hold a quick special meeting to discuss the regulations, to discuss the bonds. We could always do that.
Yeah,
But-
this is.
But
No, but I
delaying
think-
it much
if-
beyond April, I think is a problem.
No, I think if we can aim for the 14th and hope for the best. And if the 14th ends up like blowing up, like sometimes happens, it is before, that we can plan on finishing it in an hour on the 28th.
Commissioner Begman, I'm okay with that. And hoping that we get it done on the 14th.
All right, well, where we're at 14th, then we can schedule then. Work for everyone?
Okay, that works. Yep.
Works for me.
All right.
And Abby, whatever you did with this particular Zoom meet, it showed up in my calendar, which was cool because that's how Jamie.
Jamie
like,
sent it out as an actual invite, I think.
It was cool because that's how I saw it.
Okay,
'Cause-
we'll try and do
So,
that in the
yeah,
future,
it
although we don't
showing
know
up
how
in
much
my
longer
calendar
we'll
was.
have
yeah,
this
that was
function.
great.
I guess to that point, Commissioner Bassman, our next meeting is still electronic or not?
Yeah, we'll discuss at the next meeting what our next meeting will be, but our next meeting is remote.
Okay. I guess are we done, Jamie?
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, you got it. Is there a second?
Second,
Second.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, all.
good night, thanks,
Have
everyone.
a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.